Evening and welcome to Wellness Through Mindfulness, another wonderful evening ahead of us. My name is Alan Donsky, and I'm one of the team that coordinates this wonderful group that has started about 7 years ago. And the purpose of Wellness Through Mindfulness was to bring mindfulness and related practices and understandings and teachings in a secular fashion to the broader community. We've actually reached an interesting milestone today. I was just looking at the wtm.breathproject.org website, and we're also on Meetup, and there are 1,900 members on the list, and we seem to be growing. So certainly the interest is there for people, even if people can't always attend our presentations, which are held every 2 weeks on the second and third Thursday of the month. This month will be an exception. We will not be meeting in 2 weeks' time. And just to let you know about some upcoming events, we'll resume again, and this is on our website, and the websites are listed in the chat room. I'll be doing a presentation and leading a meditation sit. The topic of the joys of impermanence, and certainly the changes we've all been through in the last couple of years. And many of us find change uncomfortable or difficult or anxiety provoking. But in fact, there's another side to it because it's opportunity for creativity. So that is July the 5th. All the information's on the website. In follow-up to that will be perhaps an even more challenging topic, life-threatening illness as a catalyst to living your best future life, and that will be with Dr. Linda Colson, who's a very well-known researcher, teacher at the Tom Baker Cancer Center here in Calgary. And then Mary Wallace on the 2nd of February, will be talking on why do we meditate. So Mary will be sort of exploring with us collectively and individually, what is it that brings us to the practice of mindfulness or meditation. I'd like to remind you that this evening we'll be having a talk, and I'll introduce the speaker in a couple of minutes. We'll go till about 8 o'clock. We will have about 25 minutes to ask questions. The session is recorded, and you can ask questions in the chat box if you are so inclined to raise your hand and ask a live question. Please feel free to do so. And I'll be checking through the questions and compiling some of them together. We want to remind folk that this is not a forum for anything other than really education and questions regarding anything about mindfulness, personal growth, wellness, etc. We're really not equipped to answer personal questions that may provide or may require the input of professionals or mental health care providers. We remind you as well, we are not-for-profit, so please feel free to give a small donation on the website, even a small amount, $5 or $10. We do have expenses related to the website and technical issues. So having said all that, which I believe I covered, and if you haven't already signed up, then please do so, or you have friends. Tonight, it's my pleasure to introduce Christine Francoeur, who joined our leadership team, as it were, a couple of years ago, and we've really been delighted to have Christine. Christine introduces herself these days as the Chief Living Officer at Shadow Light Global, SHADOWLIGHT, Shadow Light Global. And Christine is a certified mindfulness meditation teacher and a registered yoga teacher as well. The majority of her professional career was in marketing, business development, and advertising. And then, like many folks who find that there's something more to life, Christine was faced with a crisis when she was diagnosed with breast cancer at age 33. And so Christine figured that there was some kind of message that she was receiving from her body and perhaps the universe as well. And she decided she needed to change some things up. She began studying widely in yoga philosophy, Vipassana meditation, And she's really been transformed in her personal and professional life through the practices of mindfulness. This transformation has taken her into bringing her business experience, her professionalism, project management, and so forth into speaking events, teaching, and coaching others to be able to help them discover the benefits of these transformational practices. And Christine's talk this evening and is called Mindfulness at Work. So thank you, Christine, and really excited to have you join us tonight.
Dear Alan, thank you. It is always my pleasure to be here with the WTM team. I think Leslie's here with us tonight, and Phil, and of course, Alan. That's our core teaching group. And it has been absolutely my privilege to be a part of this group as we bring these topics to you, our community. But right now, all I see is little black boxes. So if anybody wants to pop off their camera for just a minute and actually let me see you, that would be really lovely. I'd love to know that there are individuals behind there. There's Leslie. Hi, Leslie. And there's Phil. Look, we got all of us in a row here. Hi, welcome. Glad you can be here. This is great. Hi. Some faces that are familiar I see from other times. Glad that you could join us again. And if you're new, welcome, and totally understand if you're not feeling like you want to pop off that camera either. I totally understand. Before we get started tonight, I did want to just let you know later on in the hour, I'm actually going to bring an invitation to you to do some writing and a bit of journaling. So if you wanted to maybe grab some paper or pen, if that would be handy, I'll just give you a minute to do that and we'll get started. While that's happening, some of you even wanted to just drop into the chat box maybe some of your intentions for tonight and why this topic was appealing to you, why you wanted to come and spend an evening with me while we talk about mindfulness at work, which is a topic that's near and dear to me and has been really transformational in my life, and I love to talk about it. So I'm just curious, maybe if you feel like sharing why you're here tonight and what you're hoping to learn or maybe take away or rediscover. It's always great to hear from you. So if you feel like doing that, I'd love to hear from you. Yes, less reactivity at work. Want to learn how it can be employed in my career work life rather than just my personal life. Yes, Monty, Patsy. Yes, exactly. I feel that. We're going to talk about that tonight. Yes, to not get so rattled when something goes wrong. Absolutely. Absolutely. We can get caught up in the cycle of just reacting at work and the energy of others and how that pulls us out of ourselves and we're responding before, we even realize it. So strategies for continuity of mindfulness. Yes, beautiful. Great. Well, thank you. And if anyone else wants to pop in there with some other comments, I would just welcome and love to see that. But I think we can get started. Nice. So, like I mentioned, tonight's topic is so integral to my own journey at work, which is why I chose to speak about it tonight. And to be 100% honest, for a long time, I didn't believe that mindfulness even existed at work, that maybe that's even true for some of you, that my days at work were primarily fueled on caffeine, adrenaline, stress, fear, worry, anxiety. And I saw mindfulness as a completely separate state that really existed outside the hours of 9 to 5. It was very elusive and it felt like a state of being that I was like chasing. And if I was lucky, maybe once in a while I would catch it, but I had no idea why or how that even happened. And for sure, I would read about it and I intellectually believed I understood it. But it wasn't until I really committed to a regular meditation practice where I would sit every day, slowly build my time on the cushion, developing my practice, learning more, exploring, that I really started to get a felt sense of what it was like to be mindful. And with that, it was like I was building the skill of mindfulness. And the best part was that I started feeling the effects when I was at work. I didn't feel so trapped by the stress of work or the panic or the moods of other people. And I think someone mentioned this here, I think it was Patsy, that she wants to be less reactive. And that's what happened with me. I was less reactive. I became more patient. My focus and my concentration deepened. And it's like I just felt like I was more in a true flow at work. And one of the things that I loved the most about mindfulness for me at work was I started to develop a sense of pause. Like I didn't necessarily have to jump in with the right answer immediately, or you know what, I could take a pause before I answered that question or responded to that email, and nobody thought any less of it. It was me just really giving myself that space, or just those few seconds to say, okay, how can I bring the skill of mindfulness into how I reply or how I respond or how I show up for this? And more, it got easier and easier as I started to bring that to work. And that doesn't mean that work was easy, but how I showed up or how I was showing up was different. And, things would be uncomfortable or they would be challenging. And I would notice that the natural response of my body or my mind, instead of reacting unconsciously more and more, I could interrupt that response and respond in a way that was mindful. So I think someone might just.
Christine, you're muted.
Am I back?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I think maybe everybody got muted there somehow, so sorry about that. So I'll just repeat, so you can tell I absolutely 100% fully, completely love how mindfulness transformed how I participate at work every day. But, that started with a commitment. And hopefully tonight, maybe for you, it's a renewed commitment, maybe it's a new commitment, but maybe you start to see how mindfulness can really support you, how that skill that you can bring to your work can actually change how you interact at work, and the freedom in that. And ultimately, really, truly, it has to start with us. It has to start with you. And not only that commitment, I would also say that something else that is just as equally important is acceptance. Acceptance of the present moment, to face like what's here for you. And that doesn't mean being passive or complacent. And it doesn't mean resigning or like giving up. I see it as active acceptance, that there's choice in this. And this is about getting real about how you show up to work in a way that is practical, even though there's all the chaos and all the challenges. So during the day, like Alan mentioned, you can find me at the company that I work for, which is Shadow Light Global. We're a company that helps other companies, teams, individuals, leaders, managers work with change and transformation. So that might be through consulting, that might be through leadership development, that can be through coaching or even executive coaching. And so we're interacting with people in the workplace daily. And through my work, some of the themes that seem to be consistent from our clients, or even the people that I'm individually coaching, are it's hard for me to deliver because I've got all these things coming at me all day long. I just get too distracted and it's hard for me to like focus. Or, there's feelings of like overwhelm. There's just like too much. I don't even know where to start. It's like competition. There can be this, feeling of competing with others on the team for positions or promotions. Striving for perfection, that feeling of always having to deliver at a certain level that, just is always pushing harder and harder. And, one thing that when I hear all of these and they come up in our conversations is, to me, they are all pointing to something that's actually been covered a lot in the media lately, which is called the idea of quiet quitting. So what does that mean? Quiet quitting is when an employee like stays in their job, but puts in the absolute bare minimum of effort to actually prevent themselves from burning out. And so when we think about this, a person is there doing the smallest amount of work they can to avoid being overwhelmed. And to me, like, quiet quitting really is about protection. It's about finding safety for themselves again. And, we can assume that type of response likely didn't just happen overnight, that there's been a slow and steady build, maybe both at work and at home, that has just led to this person feeling completely at capacity and is unwilling and completely unable to take on anymore. So they've turned in, and it's like they've turned away. They're like saying no. It's like, I can't anymore. And all this is happening while companies more than ever are looking to employees to contribute more, like wanting stronger and better leadership, more creativity, generating great ideas, being a motivational leader, taking a team to change and transform, to bring innovation to the company. So there's this pull, like employees, are saying we're tired, we're fatigued. It's like, it's too much. And, companies are saying, give us more, we need more. So you can just feel that. And, even when we think about what it was like coming back to the office, like after the pandemic, that caused so many people to reevaluate how they're spending their hours in the day and what it meant to actually have some work-life balance when, we had some extra time. We weren't commuting into the office maybe, or, we were able to get to those appointments that we put off. Maybe we're working out more and eating better. We were meal planning. We could get to our child's, soccer games, different things. You can see where suddenly there was this balance. And then, it was like that transition back. And if that meant transitioning back, suddenly maybe priorities changed. Maybe that promotion that seemed like so important wasn't quite so important anymore, because all of a sudden there was this balance and this quality of life again. So it wasn't just work, it was like work was incorporating into our whole life. And so, these challenges likely exist in varying degrees for all of us, and in different ways, depending on our role, where we work. But if we start turning away from them, we can start to feel like these deep feelings of like loneliness and like frustration and even anger and resentment. And it might turn to, this internal battle within us. And, that can cause things to come out that maybe aren't us. Like maybe we start becoming somewhat even like passive aggressive, or just frustrated and tuned out, or we're resisting things when they come up. Like, you don't want to put your hand up anymore to contribute, or you're avoiding certain people or hard conversations, difficult projects. I see this one a lot with my clients, difficult big projects that require a lot of energy and momentum to really make change happen. They're turning away, like, they're ignoring it. They're not giving it their attention because they just don't have it. And, other ways that can show up, that feeling is like, we're turning more to judgment. Like we might be judging ourselves more. We might be judging our colleagues, our managers, the CEO, and there can be a bit of the blame game. And, it creates less discernment and less critical thinking. We're not bringing our ideas and our creativity. You can feel like it's just dried up, it's gone away. And I don't know, maybe some of these are sounding familiar to some of you because like I hear it and I heard it and I hear it regular and I get it. I really do. And everything that I just described, like that's heavy and that's hard. And I don't think any of us want to show up to work in that way. I really don't. I don't believe that we start our job feeling like that's how we want to arrive at work. So, more than ever before, I believe that this is contributing to us desperately wanting to act with mindfulness at work. Like we're desperate for it. And maybe we're not really calling it mindfulness. Maybe we're calling it balance, or maybe you just want less stress, or trying to stop myself from burning out, or whatever it is. But there is a desire here for change. And, likely that desire for change isn't just at work. It's probably through our whole lives. It's not just those hours of 8 to 5. I'll say this, and this is very true, but I also want to challenge us a little bit. Many of us have heard the regrets of the dying, that they wish they hadn't worked so hard, or they wish they hadn't spent so much time at work. And there's a part of me that really believes why that is because we get to work and we realize that, that was work, that wasn't actually really my life. My life was everything outside of work. But is that really true? For most of us, we need to work. We need to ensure our basic needs are met. We have homes, we have children, families, we have travel dreams, we have things we want to do and experience, and those are all valid and those are all necessary. And so work helps us with that. And tonight, like I'm here, I guess, to bring back or offer you an invite that, what if we started looking at work in a new way? What if we started to accept and welcome time at work rather than a resistance of being at work? What if we started to shift our mindset that instead of going to work to make a living, we really remembered we are living our lives at work too. We're living our lives at work too. And while we're there, how can it be more pleasant? How can it be more fulfilling? How can we embrace the challenges? How can we bring our creativity fully online? And dare I say, like, how can we bring more joy? And we know work is necessary. We all know that. Our hands are up for that. And so wouldn't we want it to be an experience where we could show up as our whole self, that we could welcome it without feeling like we were at the mercy of it, that it was out of our control, and that however I showed up really didn't matter? So just that complacency again, that quiet quitting. So how do we make it possible? How do we show up mindfully at work? And there's been more and more research that really indicates if we start paying attention to what's happening around us instead of reacting or moving unconsciously through life, we reduce our stress, we increase our focus, our concentration, more ideas, more creativity, and that sense of well-being that I'm talking about actually contributes to more emotions like happiness and like joy. So the proof's in the studies, the proof is out there. So that's all good, but what about me, right? So what about you? What if you considered that mindfulness was really a doorway? If you could think about it as like a doorway you chose to walk through to presence. That opening, that doorway is an opening to the truth of the moment, the truth of your moment. And then how do you listen for your truth? And really, that's what mindfulness is. It's like presence. It's bringing all of you, your full attention to what's happening around you and in you. Around you and in you, what's happening. And when you do that, where are you? You are right in the present moment. And we've heard this before and it sounds so cliche, but it's just so true. It's like our life is a series of moments, right? That's all it is. It's this moment and the next. And are we stuck in the past, like ruminating about what happened, or, the pain and the suffering from what was the past? Or are we wishing it away, looking at the clock, longing for a future that's to come and the promises of what it's to bring, versus actually, what am I doing here now? Like, because this is our life. This is your life. This is my life right now. In this moment, we are together, right? Right now, that we can be mindfully present versus mindlessly lost. And for me, the greatest lesson that I've had in my discovery of mindfulness was bringing my curiosity. So I'm just going to share a little story of how it all started for me. I was in my early 30s and I was like hot on the trail of building my career. I was working for Air Miles. We were a young entrepreneurial company. There was like 120 of us at the time. Like, we were just in that startup phase. It was like super exciting. It was like working hard to drive results. It was like a brand new business. And ultimately, like, I was so motivated. I was looking to my next promotion and what the next opportunity was. And that would mean, more money, more travel, like bigger accounts, like all the things that I believed, was success in my role. And yet I wasn't managing it well at all. Like, not at all. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't sleeping well. There was competition at work. A lot of times it didn't feel like truly collaborative. There would be times where I could feel myself getting spun out about something. And I would remember, like, another business analyst who since has become my dearest and best friend. We are still like together. But she would say to me, she would just be like, just take a deep breath. And I was like, that's like really good advice. And at the time it would just like irk me because, I was like all hot and I was like, this is not going to work. And I mean, I'm already breathing, it's like the shoulders are up and I'm tight. And how could a breath possibly help this situation? But then I got to thinking, okay, maybe there's something to this. My husband and I were wanting to have a family, and I knew all the stress and pressure that I was putting under myself likely wasn't helping. So I thought, well, I'll try yoga. And, that was highly entertaining on multiple levels, just mostly because I was absolutely shocked at my lack of flexibility, mobility from like sitting at a desk for 10 hours a day. My hips were locked. I could barely touch my toes. I could barely sit up straight. And it just took considerable effort to even move through the practice. And yet week after week, it wasn't the down dogs. It wasn't the stretching for sure. I know I was getting the benefits of all of that, but that's not what kept me there. I was attending for one reason only, and that was Shavasana, the final resting pose. And, I would laugh when I would see sweatshirts where it would say, I'm just here for the Shavasana, because I swear that was me. That was it. This was the most special, like 10 minutes of my entire week. It was this beautiful time where the teacher would like dim the lights and the candles would flicker, and I would lie down and cover myself in this blanket and just listen to him as he guided my awareness back to myself, back into my body. I wasn't just living here anymore, like just living in like above my shoulders. And it was there that at last I knew like what it was like to feel peace again, even just those brief moments of ease. I remembered I was breathing. I remembered I had a body that wanted to relax, that my nervous system wanted to just come out of fight or flight and just get rid of that feeling of always being under attack. And, I remember that in those sessions that I was like more than my thoughts, my worries, my fears that were constantly swirling. And I remembered that, there was emotions here that I was just slowly tucking away and pushing down. And these emotions were trying to come up because, they had messages for me and I was ignoring them. And so that really was my first introduction to what it meant to bring some mindfulness to my day, to turn inward and notice like what was true for me every week, 10 blissful minutes. And yet each week I would get up from my mat and I would be back at work the next day, believing that that sense of connection could only be found there on the mat. I couldn't possibly bring any of that with me into my day-to-day life. It just seemed completely impossible. And I think back on that, and if I had only known myself today, like my future self, to know that I just had to bring some curiosity to this new way of being that I was discovering for myself. And that perhaps like all this suffering that I was having at work actually didn't have to be the case, that I could actually show up as myself. And I say this because fortunately, this suffering doesn't have to be your reality either. How we feel at work, that constriction, that we can stop feeling like imprisoned by work, that, maybe we can let go of the dream that work needs to be smooth sailing in order for us to feel satisfied or fulfilled. And that we can start to remember to bring our whole selves without losing ourselves to that, what feels like just like continuous demands. So rather than resist, how do we slow things down? And mindfulness doesn't mean we're slow, but how do we just even take seconds to open up to the truth of the moment while we work? So the truth of the moment, when you're in those like hot conversations or something pops up and you respond, how do you respond consciously with your own truth? And, we all seek stability, right? Like ultimately that's, what the mind is trying to help us with, to help us stay in status quo and not put us in danger and, keep us over here where we're nice and safe, homeostasis, right? But I mean, that's not our reality. We want to be able to arrive in a way that's true to ourselves, but also in a way to know that we can make choices that can help us feel safe and secure and actually an honoring of who we are. None of us want to feel like out of control. Of course we don't. But instead of turning away when things get hard, how do we turn in and start to accept work with a deeper awareness, even though it's got all the complications and frustrations and the unknowns? How do we stay for it? And it has to be a choice, and that has to come from you, right? And one thing I want to say too about the nature of work, and I know this was, very true for me, and it's true for a lot of my clients, is there's always a large focus like on the future, right? We're always driving for something else, like, whether we're creating a new product, whether, we're building the marketing to support that new product, whether it's growth or whatever that might be, we're driving to the future, to something else. And that can continually pull us out of the present, where we start telling ourselves this story that, when we get to whatever that is, or we achieve whatever that is, that's when things will be better, right? And you can see the illusion around that, right? That I'm not saying that we shouldn't have goals, and I'm not saying we shouldn't drive for things, but how do we also be with what's here today, with what we know is true today, that it isn't necessarily about, an existing achievement in the future. So if you are willing to maybe shift from that continuous striving to this future state to actually being present completely, that's when you discover that it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm being mindful. I'm here right now. I'm noticing, right? And when we're in that moment completely, we can actually remember too that this is my life that's happening right now, that actually I'm here living in the moment of this, right? We're not just here making a living, we're actually here living our life. This is your life. So how do you arrive for it? Like, how do you stay awake and present for all the moments of your life, even the hard ones, not just the easy ones? I hope, I like to think that that's, why we're here tonight is, we are here because we're passionate about the practice of mindfulness. And for me, that's what I'm bringing is a reminder that it is possible for us to wake up at work. That you can remember that you are not your job, you are not your title, you are not what you do, right? That mindfulness is here to help all of you be present for your life, even while you work, your whole life. So it's easy to think we are what we contribute. I get it. Been there, totally know. Yet, it's that invite, bringing the whole self, all of ourselves. And just even for an example, I just invite you to think about maybe a task that you do pretty regularly at work. Maybe I have a teacher somewhere here. Maybe someone is teaching children how to read, or maybe someone's working downtown, with a team. Whatever your role is, just think of one specific task that you do pretty regularly. And then what would be, a metric of success for that particular task? And now as you think of the what, when it comes to that task, I just invite you to maybe think about how you do that task. So if it's something that's repetitive, is there an opportunity for you to bring more patience? Is there an opportunity to look at that task in a new way, to bring yourself, to bring your curiosity and say, could this be done differently? Or maybe in the past, you felt frustrated or impatient or, bored of this task. So then how can you bring in some grace or even some space for an open mind that allows you to see it in a whole new way? I'm sure, you've had that experience where maybe, and I've definitely had this, where I've been training somebody who's maybe joined a company that I'm working at, and you're going over and you're reviewing something and they're asking questions about what we're doing and why we're doing it and why do we do it that way? It's that new employee that has fresh eyes and a new way of thinking about things that you're like, oh no, that's a good question, right? It's that, it's this curiosity. It's just space to look at things maybe in a new way, a new approach. I came across recently in this book, it's the Harvard Business Review's 10 must reads on high performance. And one of the topics in here was on mindfulness in the age of complexity. And one of the women, her name is Alison Beard, she was interviewing Ellen Langer. And Ellen Langer is a researcher on mindfulness, and she has greatly influenced thinking across a range of fields from behavioral economics to positive psychology. And there's something in here that I wanted to share with you, and it just reminded me around this particular topic that we were exploring. Is the interviewer asked her, what are some of the specific benefits of being more mindful according to your research? And the first thing she said is better performance. We did a study with symphony musicians who, it turns out, are bored to death. They're playing the same pieces over and over again, and yet it's a high status job they can't easily walk away from. So we had groups of them perform. Some were told to replicate a previous performance they'd like, that is to play pretty mindlessly, and others were told to make their individual performance new in subtle ways, to play mindfully. And now remember, this wasn't jazz, so the changes were very subtle. But when we played recordings of the symphonies for people who knew nothing about the study, they overwhelmingly preferred the mindfully played pieces. So here we had a group performance where everybody was doing their own thing, and it was better, right? They were showing up as themselves mindfully, and it was better. So then there's this view that maybe at work, if you let everyone do their own thing, that there will be chaos. Well, when people are doing their own thing in a rebellious way, yes, it might. But if everyone is working in the same context and is fully present, there's no reason why you shouldn't get a superior coordinated performance. I just love that. I just love that, because it was like the subtleties of change, and the people listening like could hear it, right? It's authentic. It was like musicians showing up authentically to play as themselves. And it's the same for you. It's like, how do we show up work in an authentic, mindful way? Like through our presence, you know, contributing in ways, in new ways, instead of those conditioned, you know, unconscious responses and other repeated patterns. It's like, just tick it off the list, tick it off the list. And mindfulness doesn't have to be this whole reinvention. It's about really checking in, being here for yourself, and bringing that to your work. You know, it sounds so simple, right? But you can just see we get swept up into the flow of our day, and we forget. And so really, the skill of mindfulness for me was built in meditation. It was built on the cushion. It's the hours and the hours that I sat there to know where to look and to be with myself, to be with my thoughts, to hear what I was telling myself, to notice my emotions and see them arrive in my body. And even when they were hard, to actually sit there and be with them, you know, to not turn away, to not numb, to not distract myself, not to lash out in anger or frustration, but to have that response and know that it's here and it's true, because we're not turning away from it. We're not saying that it's not welcome, that all we're looking for is ease and well-being, because that's not it at all. We're here to welcome all of it, all of you, and how you show up. Right? But we have to start. We have to start on the journey. And really, that can only come from you. That has to come from a real commitment and a want to make the change. You know, acceptance, curiosity, like coming into the practice to see what's possible. And you know what? You can be like me. You can bring all your baggage. It's like you can bring all your doubts and all of those voices that are saying this is never going to work. I'm going to do it for a day and then that's it. You know, you can bring all of that and you can see that and go, yeah, that's here too. Hi, welcome. Hi, welcome, critical mind. Yeah, you can be here too. But I'm doing this, right? So I've done a lot of talking. Let's do some meditation. Okay? All right. So I think you have your piece of paper in front of you. Maybe you have a pen. Let me look at the time here. I'm going to just give you 2 minutes to just do a dump of your thoughts. Whatever is here right now. Just whatever's in the front of your mind, dump it out on the paper and let's see what your mind has to say. One more minute. Okay, let's just wrap that up, your final sentence. Okay, let's come into the body. So just keeping your eyes open. I know a lot of us with meditation, we instantly want to close the eyes, but I'm actually looking in just to maybe build some skills with the eyes open, if that feels all right for you. So just right now, just noticing the body, the shape of your body, where you're sitting, maybe some bends in your elbows or your knees. Just feel the shape of your body. I'm just going to start like grounding ourselves. So like, what does it mean to be grounded for you? And we can create that by coming in and feeling our connection and our place in space. So feeling into the body here in the room where you are. Just opening the eyes if they aren't already and looking around just to take in the room around you. And then finding one thing, maybe in front of you that just allows you to take an easy seat and let your attention rest on that one thing in front of you. The eyes seeing. You see colors, shapes, textures. Notice of this one particular thing. And let's opening up the senses. What's one thing that you can hear? It might be close by, it might be far away. It might arrive and go, and see the impermanence of sound, even as a practice, that it's here, it's gone. What's something that you can touch? What's something that you can pick up and feel the shape of and the texture and maybe the grooves or the indents, the weight of it, maybe the temperature. Is it cool to touch? Is it warm? What does your sense of touch tell you about this item that you're holding? Bring our awareness to another sense. So our sense of smell, and maybe there's something around you that you could smell. Maybe you have like a cup of tea, or, I have an essential oil here. You can even just smell into the air around you. Maybe you don't notice the sense of smell or a scent. And if that's true for you, maybe you just notice the air arriving in your nose. Now let's move to our breath. Now, if you're a regular meditator, likely you would just want to close your eyes. But for this practice, let's just keep a soft gaze. Maybe the lids are just halfway closed, the gaze maybe is down, and you're not really focusing on one particular thing. It's like, you've opened up the aperture of your vision just to take in the room around you, but it's just like a soft gaze. And just bring your attention to your breath. Notice right now, where does the breath move your body? Is it moving your chest? Is it moving your ribs? Do you feel it in the back of the body? Front of the body? What is the texture of your breath? Is it smooth? Is it sticky? And now in silence, just watching 3 full cycles of breath. The pause in between, the pause at the beginning, 3 complete inhales and 3 complete exhales. And if you lose your focus, just start again. Now just keeping, your shoulders steady and your face soft, your jaw soft, releasing maybe any held tension you can feel around the jaw. Just offer you an invite to maybe breathe a little deeper, a little bit longer, but without straining. Can you deepen the breath without pushing it harder? Can you invite your body to breathe deeper and longer? So 3 more breath cycles. Deeper, wider, longer, no strain. And from here, can you bring your attention down to the soles of the feet? Can you feel them resting on the floor beneath you? Or maybe you're lying down and you can feel the back of the heels resting on the surface beneath you. Wherever you are, can you feel the connection of your feet to what's solid beneath you? Weight and the sensations of your legs. Moving into the pelvis and the hips. And into the torso, front and back. All the organs and tissues and muscles that wrap around and support your spine. Into the shoulders, down the length of the arms and into the hands. All sensation. This body of yours here right now in this moment. The sensations of the neck and your head. And then opening your attention, not just to particular parts of the body, but the whole body. Can you feel into the awareness of your entire body here as one? All of you present. Now an invitation to maybe place one hand or both of your hands at the center of your chest and your heart. And just saying silently, I am okay. I am safe. I am loved. I am okay. I am safe. And I am loved. I am okay. I am safe. And I am loved. Noticing any energy or sensations in the body. Just one word. I just offer you this exploration in one word. Right now, I feel. And as you open up to what has arrived for you, what are the sensations around that emotion? What do you notice in your body? That this is here too, and it's true in this moment right now that you brought your curiosity to see the truth of you. It's truth of you in your whole body. Right now, in this moment, in this time, this place. And perhaps your hand is still on your heart, but it's not. Invite you, you can bring it back if that feels right. And just silently repeating to yourself, I am here. I am here. I am here. Just concludes our meditation. So it's just like an exploration through the mind, into the senses, into our body, into some emotions. And we brought ourselves some compassion. Really, I just tried to bring you the experience of a few different ways that you could mindfully bring those practices to yourself during your day. And they can be brief. They don't have to be long. So coming out of this, if you want to just take a couple of deep breaths and just shift yourself, I want to just wrap up tonight with a PowerPoint to just give you some ideas about where to start. So I'm just gonna shift to that right now, and then we'll open it up for some questions and a bit of discussion. So just one moment here. Just bring this up. All right. Oops. So where do I start? hopefully with the last 50 minutes that we spent together, that you feel a renewed commitment to your practice. That is like my greatest wish for you, is that you are like, yes, I need to build my skills of mindfulness. And yes, we can build that at work, but really one of the best ways to do that is just with ourselves in the quietness of our cushion. So, start that practice, even 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. There's more and more research now that really says we're better off even to split our sessions into smaller bits of time and do it more frequently, as opposed to one long session. So that could be like 10 minutes at the start of the day, 10 minutes at the end of the day, just start, right? And when we start, there can be, a real renewed sense of coming back to the practice, committing to it, but there can be some bumps along the way. And really, my greatest suggestion is that you can find a teacher that you connect with, that you want to learn with, and that you're able to actually work with them to help deepen your practice, to maybe overcome, when things come up and you maybe want to stop the practice, they can help you with that. And they can give you different techniques, different anchors, different places to look to build the practice. So look for that. And of course, our website is filled with so many great teachers and previous talks that we've done and guided meditations. So, really coming to us and our website is another really great place to look to. So starting the practice, getting back to the regularity of it, we also, the first thing we need to really look at is like attention. So by tuning in to your whole person intelligence, and when I say our whole person intelligence, what I mean by that is our body, our mind, our emotions, the social layers, how we interact with the world around us and even in us, what's happening. And then of course, our spiritual connection. Like all of these intelligences within us, add up to our whole person. And mindfulness is a great practice to bring to those elements. I mean, we just did that in the short time that I guided you through the meditation. We looked at our thoughts. We got out some thoughts of things that were here that the mind wanted to say that we needed to get out. And, maybe that can be like the to-do list or, a tough conversation. And even just by doing that dump, just getting out what's in the mind and then sitting to practice can make a huge difference, right? We gave the mind the attention that it wants so that it can start to slow down. We come into the body, we see what's here, maybe there's pain, or maybe there's tight, or there's tightness or constriction, or maybe there's the sensations of the emotions that are here, the messengers that are here for us that perhaps we've been turning away from, not wanting to see. That tension in the shoulders or tension in the jaw from not being able to speak up, or feeling like we're bracing ourselves or holding ourselves all day because we don't know what's coming at us. It's like, how do we consciously soften? How do we trust ourselves, come back to ourselves, look inside and know we are safe and okay? We have so many great talks that you can look back on when it talks about like the window of tolerance. And I've even spoken about that in one of my previous talks about what it means to actually work with our nervous system to better understand that so that we can feel safe and secure. And then of course, like our social layers and, how we show up in our whole person and interact in the world. Like that's a big part of who we are, inside out, outside in. Right? Our boundaries and trust in ourselves, not just, what the boundaries are with other people, but even just honoring ourselves. And then of course, our spiritual intelligence, like really tuning in, getting more aware of our intuition, to turn that on, to start actively listening for the messages that are coming through that the thinking mind maybe is overridden, or, letting that connection to something greater than ourselves be here. And whatever that is for you, and however that shows up for you. Like all of these are here for us to bring curiosity to start to be with ourselves in our life. And hopefully, you can start to see that happens throughout the whole day, not just segmented into chunks of work and not at work. And then I really think compassion is so, so important. Compassion is the key to this practice because it can be so easy to be hard on ourselves. It's like the thinking mind takes over and it's like, see, I'm not any good at this. And yesterday I just reacted and we just get judging. And really what we need to give ourselves the most is compassion. Kristen Neff, if you want to do any additional reading on that, Chris Gerber, I believe, and Kristen Neff have done like wonderful work on the power of compassion and coupled with mindfulness and how it's like truly transformative when it comes to making change in our lives. And that compassion doesn't necessarily have to be that yin, inward, softer, gentler, thing. When we think about compassion, it can also be like a yang, like an action, where we can come out maybe more bolder and truer and, like stepping forward into action. So you can see where, it's an honoring of what's needed. It's both, right? It's not just the soft side. It can actually be action to feel like we can come into acceptance in a way of our own truth and what that means, to not be just passive, which I spoke to at the beginning of the talk. But one other aspect of compassion truly is to offer ourselves the grace and the kindness that you would just naturally give to others. It's like, can we remember to bring that to ourselves as we move through this? And then finally, like we start to look, well, what does this mean? So I'm building my practice, I've given myself compassion, and now it's like that self-authorship. It's what we were talking about, where we're reducing those reactive moments where we can respond mindfully, right? That we can actually control ourselves in the sense that it's like, I don't have to just be on. I can take a pause. I can give this to myself. And through that, we start to develop like our witness consciousness, right? We can actually see our experience and ourselves within it, so that we can move forward mindfully. We start to let go of the judgment and we really bring in discernment, right? Like, we talk a lot about what it means to be non-judgmental in mindfulness. And to me, it's actually really more about the acceptance, like to actually release that judgment and just accept what's here, to welcome it all, to know that I am a human having an experience and I will have my reactions. Of course I will. And yet I can actually discern, what needs to be here versus what is reactionary. Part of this self-authorship, and I talked a bit about this in the beginning, is creating like some calm for yourself. Like a big part of the practice and a big part of building mindfulness for ourselves actually starts to create that peace and ease. But yet the trappings of that can be always just thinking, oh, mindfulness makes me feel so relaxed, so calm and peaceful. And yeah, that can be here too, but that's not always the case. So just say that around creating calm, that, I don't want that to just be something that we fall back on, that we're striving for, right? It's actually knowing that we are a greater being holding it all. And those calm waters are always within. Absolutely. That's what holds it all. So it's finding the calm and knowing that it's always here too. It's just under the surface. So I've talked a bit about this, the pausing to respond versus reacting, and even like releasing some of those hard expectations that we have for ourselves, like that striving and that looking towards the future. It's like, we can set our goals and sure, we have hopes and we have ambitions and we have all those things, but where the trappings can be is like the expectations. And then when it doesn't quite go the way we thought it would, then it can be like, oh, well, why bother? Those feelings. But, how do we let go of the expectations that cause us the suffering through the striving? That's here, right? And we want to look for joy. We want to look for humor and laughter and goodness and kindness. And how do we ourselves bring more of that, like in an authentic way, right? That when we start to foster this well-being in ourselves, that actually, you know, those feelings, those naturally good feelings are going to start to arrive like more and more. And throughout all of this, can we embrace like gratitude? Because I'm sure many of us here like understand the power of the practice of gratitude and how that is completely shifts, you know, our mental well-being and our state of mind. And one last thing around self-authorship, I would say is there's always a really great opportunity to be mindful more every day, and setting that intention early in the day for yourself, like writing it down. Maybe you're a journaler, maybe you can set that intention for mindfulness and actually keep track of it. Like, how did I do today? So that we start to really become aware that, oh yeah, this is actually working. Like, we're conscious of what's happening. So we're giving some fuel to the practice. So these are just some ideas around self-authorship and how maybe you can help to bring more mindfulness to your life, and especially at work. So this is just me. This is my contact information. If you'd like to talk to me more about mindfulness or even coaching, which is a big part of my day, I'm happy to talk more about how I can help you with that, or even, you know, just even the practices. So you can find me at my email, but I'm also on Instagram. I've just started building my account there, and I do some fun tips and tricks and ideas for the practice. So like with that, not sure where we are for time, 8:13. We still got a few minutes for questions or comments, and I'd just love to hear from you. So stop my share here.
Thank you so much, Christine. That's always it's always a delight to share space with you. You bring just a joy and a lightness to very challenging topics. You bring your heart always. You bring your spirit, and particularly, and you embody the compassion, the gentility, the pause, and you practice all those things of which you speak. So thank you very much for that. It's truly a blessing. Someone's asking, Christine, Monty, can you post your contact, Instagram, etc. in the chat? Your website, as I mentioned earlier, Shadow Light Consulting is your website. And I want to read something from the website. It's a good lead in while Christine's doing that. I looked at her website earlier, and she talks about leadership, and I think it ties in, Christine, and I do have a question as well. Leadership ties into authorship, and the word authorship also has the word authority built into it. And I think we have to remember that why we don't like authoritarianism is because somebody else is authoring the story. But in fact, we can be an authority on ourselves, and we have a wisdom that's inside of all of us, as you mentioned, intuition and so forth, and to tap into that. So this is a quote from your website. So I hold you fully responsible. And there were two things that happened as I read it. I'll read the original quote, and then I want to bring in the mindfulness piece, because I think mindfulness, as you said, opens a door for us. So here's the quote. A human catalyst is an individual who influences a system to be more effective without being in control of it. The action of the catalyst is to observe the system, design an intervention, and intervene. So that's what you said about a human catalyst and leadership. Yeah. I think we could say that about mindfulness, and I think you spoke of this, that mindfulness is a catalyst, an individual who influences our system to be more effective, but mindfulness isn't in control of it. The action of mindfulness as the catalyst is to observe my system, open that pause and that space to create that intervention, and then that intervention just happens. So I think as I read this, it was a beautiful flow and connection for me between that.
Yes, I love that, Ellen. I love that you saw that. Yes, so great.
Yeah, and it brings me to, didn't you say something about the you hinted at it, I think, about the integration and the whole person. And lots of people talk about flow states. And you mentioned music, and the word flow came into my mind. Can you speak about possibly the relationship there between mindfulness and flow? Any thoughts on that?
It's interesting because for me, when I think about our whole person intelligence and all the aspects of that, like what we mentioned, like the body, the mind, our emotions, the social aspects, as well as spiritual, to me, there are times in our lives where different aspects of ourselves is like more, I want to say, forward. And like I think about myself, last year I had a lot of loss. My mother passed away, my brother passed away. And so when I think about my whole person in this past year, there was a real leading of emotion, like the big emotion of grief. Like it was leading, and it was in my days, and I couldn't turn away from that. Like it was a big part of me. And when I think about all those aspects of self, and where I could get curious around, well, what was I telling myself around my grief? Was I trying to push it away? Was I accepting of it? What was I doing, like with my body, like in terms of moving an emotion through, like how could I support myself? So and that's just like a bit of an example, like I don't want to go too far down on that, but when we look at those intelligences and how they flow and mingle together, ultimately that is like our identity, like that is the self. And so when we can actually look to the self of that and all the aspects of our whole person, and be gracious with that grace and that compassion for all of ourselves, then to me, then we are in flow.
Right. And we've got a comment, Don, who's a regular in our groups. Don's leading on from what you said. I think he's taking that. He says in the chat room there, I'll read it just to connect it, the self-authorship, to give yourself that permission to adventure with curiosity. And we do that internally. You're speaking of your grief here. And then Don talking with curiosity among others on the same pathway to healing the rift between us. And I think what mindfulness does, perhaps, Christine, and if you agree with this or not, I welcome your comments about, we also have rifts within us. We want to avoid the unpleasant. We want to lean away from it and not lean into it. And Don said, he loves this kind of uplifting. He says, I will only connect deeply with my inner wisdom, my spirit, with tools like your effort. So I think it's a big thank you to Christine for what you've done here tonight.
Love that, Don.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I sometimes get caught in the paradox, Christine, and I've heard people, attempt to answer this question, and I think it's an ongoing one because I can slip into it. The pattern where you spoke about better performance. So that can become another job for me to do. Oh, I now need to do mindfulness properly. Or I can say, oh, great, this will improve my performance. So mindfulness will make me a better sniper in the, in the Marines. So how do you respond to that not making better performance another one of those goals we're trying to achieve?
Well, I think I was trying to address that a little bit, Alan, when I was talking about, really being mindful to the moments of our life. And that actually mindfulness is this bigger contributor overall that will naturally lead to the outcome that maybe you mentioned, right? So if we are present to the moment, if we were doing and putting the energy into our presence in a way that has us showing up to the best of our ability, in whatever way that can be, I don't place any like judgment on what that looks like or the regularity of that. Like that's why to me it's like compassion, 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 right? Like how we show up, and because it's so easy for us to slip into like what you're saying, which is one more thing to achieve, one more thing to do. Oh, did I do this wrong? It's like, because to me, the energy of mindfulness and the efforting around mindfulness needs to permeate, like for me, through my whole day. And that's why, when we talk about what it means to actually live our life, like in those moments, that's why, like, for me, it's throughout my being that I can show up at work in my most authentic way.
Right.
And the truth of myself. And fortunately for me, like, I work at a company and my partner is of the same mind that, like, for example, last week, my grief was strong and we were coming into a meeting, and the first thing I said, I am here for this meeting, but I have to let you know my grief is strong today. And I named it. And so we had a moment of mindfulness together that could be here. And to me, if I start to bring that and I give that invitation to others, that to me is where the change starts. Right. That I can start to lead that, and other people can see that and feel like they can show up as they're in their full selves too, in whatever way that might be.
Right.
So that's kind of a long answer to your original question, but it gets me going.
And your performance can improve by leaning into it.
Absolutely.
Grief is showing up. You're not attached to any outcome because you don't know whether your grief is going to demand more of your attention, your care and compassion today. And in half an hour, you may say, I'm done for the day.
Yes.
Right. I've also had those kind of days in the last year or two where I start the day and after half an hour, I say, I can't do this. I'll be back. Maybe I'll be back later this afternoon, or give me a couple of hours or whatever it is. And of course, some people can't do that by the nature of their work, but just to recognize and honor the grief, and even showing compassion, I think, to the grief. I've done that if there is something I have to do, I say to the grief, thank you for showing up. I know you want a little pat on the head, but right now I'm a little busy, and perhaps I can work with you in a couple of hours. And just so you give the grief the room to know that you're not ignoring it or denying it. The grief may be very demanding, like a crying baby or a puppy, and you may need to break off in the moment. But I think that kind of flow, and so really listening to that, sometimes you may need to just not stop at all. Yeah, exactly. Have you had it? Yeah. No. Another question, it's interesting. Have you had occasions in the work where people are going, I've actually decided, thanks, Christine, for the workshop, this isn't where I need to be. I thought I needed to push myself through this the work I'm at whatever profession or calling or wherever they're at, and they go, thank you. The reason I'm miserable is not because there's something wrong with me and I can't push myself through. I don't actually belong here. Have you had those epiphany moments?
I actually, like, through my coaching practice, I've had several clients where, and it's interesting because the nature of coaching really is to get very curious about what the client brings in the moment. Like, what's here today? And they can show up and say exactly something like that, Ellen, where it's like, yes, I've been working at this and working at this, and I'm getting over it, I'm frustrated, I'm angry. And then I bring my curiosity, and we start to question that, and we start to ask, it's like, well, why and how, and what about this? And through the curiosity, we start to unravel that actually, this isn't what I was meant to do at all. And that's what happened to me, because I was working in marketing and advertising and strategy, but I kind of stumbled into that career through these really great opportunities that I couldn't say no to, because when I graduated high school, I was going to be a psychologist. I was taking one gap year, and I ended up at like a head office, and suddenly I was on a marketing and advertising. And so it took me, like, my diagnosis, of breast cancer and that awakening and coming back into my body to actually acknowledge that I was doing what I wasn't meant to do at all.
Well, and it's interesting because you've got me on now,
Mm-hmm.
because when you think about mindfulness meditation teaching, is working with the psyche, the soul.
Yeah.
The yoga practice is incorporating the mindfulness as one of the pillars of yoga, bringing that into all the body work. And then you're coaching out there for human beings who are needing it in the workforce. So you're a business psychologist. You've got your psychology. It's fantastic. It's all there.
So wish.
I'll write you a certificate and you can put it on your wall. Alan Donsky says you qualify as a psychologist.
Happy day.
Yeah.
But it's like
I'm keeping an eye on the time. We've got a big thank you from Jennifer, who says, I enjoy hearing your thoughts and wisdom. Thank you so much for your time and your help tonight. And it's interesting, Christine, sometimes we measure the level of interest or how things are sitting in by, the number of comments or questions. I think it's interesting tonight that hardly anyone's left. And I think just every word you're bringing to us is just laden with that embodiment of what you're offering here tonight as a psychologist, a yoga teacher, a mindfulness meditator, and most of all your heart and your real source of who you are, and just showing up as human beings.
Yes.
And when we just show up as human beings, we don't need to deny any part of ourselves. I remember I was at a conference once and the person said, you're perfect in your imperfection. You're perfect in your imperfection. And you've got a little work to do. I can't remember if it was Thich Nhat Hanh or whatever. Another comment, this has been wonderful. I've already been to the website. Hope to continue the conversation one-on-one in the capacity. This was meaningful. Full of meaning.
So brilliant. Well, before people leave, I also want to let people know that my partner from Shadow Light, Lisa Strogel, is presenting in March, I believe. And actually, she is a master coach. She's been working in business and HR at a senior level for a very long time. And she is going to be bringing us a discussion all around what I was talking about tonight, which is like the whole person intelligence. So she's going to bring whole person intelligence, but she is also bringing her crystal bowls because she is a sound healer.
Ooh.
So we're going to have some really great discussion around whole person intelligence, and then a really great experience to just bring it all in together. So hopefully I just plant that out there for people, hoping that they can come in March and join us.
One more comment and then I'll wrap things up. We can stay a minute or two if people need. Yes. Leslie said the movie Junebug, which I haven't seen. Thanks for the recommendation. And Leslie says from the movie, God loves you just the way you are and loves you too much to let you stay that way. And I think that with mindfulness has really done quite a bit is it helps people see that they can be more than their old stories, as you spoke to, that it opens that space, that pause. And I think that comes back to that pause and curiosity. So any parting words, 2 or 3 words? I'm taking away pause, curiosity, the gentle compassion. Any other words?
Choice.
Choose to do it.
Like, we can make this choice for ourselves. We can make this commitment. There's so much research too around what it means to actually set intention and the power of setting intention. And so I just invite all of you, like, you've heard this and we know the wisdom of mindfulness. We understand it. So how do you set an intention for yourself to bring it into your life? Like, really bring it into your life, build your practice and take it out into the world so that what you're creating, you are ultimately creating more for everyone else to do the same.
Yeah. A reminder, thank you so much. A reminder for all of us that in 2 weeks' time, and wishing everyone a wonderful season, whatever celebrations you are celebrating. Make them yours, author your festive season, your breaks, whatever festivals, rituals, prayers, devotions you have. Please make them as meaningful as you can for yourself. The world needs all the beautiful energy of every one of us. And in fact, the letting go of the stories, Christine, I'll be picking up on that, on the joys of impermanence,
Yes.
on January the 5th. And so I'll almost pick up right from there.
Good.
Because this really opens up the fact that we're not fixed. We do have this choice, the pause, to look in and create something new. And that's where the joy and the beauty and the creativity. So we're not actually losing anything. We're opening up to possibility, which brings forth light and joy and freedom and openness.
Beautifully said, Alan. Beautifully said.
Thank you very much for everyone who attended tonight. It was a beautiful evening. Thank you, Christine. As always, I am
Sure.
enheartened and enlivened by your offerings. Thank you so much. And to Phil again, who's always in the background, WTM. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Leslie, and all of you for showing up tonight. Full of wonder. Thank you, Monty. Full of wonder, wonderful.
Very
Always.
wonderful. Thank you, Monty.
Thank you very
for
much,
being
everybody.
here. Thanks
Take care.
everyone for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.